Welcome, beautiful damsels. The hardest doors to open are the ones that were never meant to be knocked on. Some people seem like fortresses, guarded, impenetrable, and almost impossible to approach. But here's the catch. They didn't build those walls for you or for anyone else. Sigmas, the lone wolves of society, have mastered the art of selective seclusion, leaving many intrigued yet frustrated by their untouchable aura. Did you know that psychologists have found people are naturally drawn to mystery because it sparks curiosity? Well, Sigmas have weaponized this trait, turning their aloofness into an almost magnetic force. But why are they so hard to get close to? Is it their elusive charm, or are they just emotionally allergic to humanity? Spoiler alert, it's both. Get ready to uncover the unconventional truths behind the Sigma mindset. Just don't expect a warm hug. They're probably busy reading existential philosophy or plotting world domination, or both. Number 1. Deep observers, rare sharers. Sigmas are exceptionally tuned into the world around them, often noticing things others miss entirely. They observe behaviors, body language, and even subtle shifts in tone or energy. This intense awareness makes them incredible at understanding situations and people. Yet paradoxically, they rarely share their own thoughts or emotions in return. While others might bond over shared vulnerabilities or open communication, Sigmas tend to keep their inner world locked away, revealing only what they absolutely need to. This creates a peculiar dynamic. On one hand, their ability to read others makes them seem insightful and empathetic. On the other, their lack of reciprocal emotional expression can feel like hitting a brick wall. It's not that Sigmas don't feel deeply, they do, but they have an almost unshakable belief that exposing too much of themselves is risky, unnecessary, or simply not worth the effort. Instead, they prefer to absorb information, quietly analyzing and filing it away for future reference. This makes connecting with them feel one-sided for many people. Conversations can leave others wondering where they truly stand because Sigmas rarely divulge enough to give clear signals. Their responses are often calculated, offering just enough to keep the exchange moving but not enough to fully open up. For the Sigma, this behavior isn't about being rude or dismissive. It's about self-preservation and control. Sharing too much feels like losing a piece of themselves. They're not trying to alienate others, it's just that, for them, listening and observing feels safer and more valuable than speaking and sharing. Unfortunately, this tendency can leave people feeling like they're trying to forge a connection with someone who's only half present, always watching, but never fully stepping into the light. It's not an intentional coldness, but it can feel like one nonetheless. Number 2, they respect space to a fault. Sigmas have an almost unshakable respect for personal space, both physical and emotional. To them, space isn't just a boundary, it's a fundamental necessity for growth, reflection, and survival. They value their solitude so deeply that they assume everyone else must feel the same way. If someone doesn't explicitly express a need for connection, Sigmas will default to giving them the distance they believe they want. While this might sound considerate, it often creates the opposite effect. Instead of appearing thoughtful, Sigmas can come across as detached or uninterested. Their absence of constant communication or physical closeness can leave others questioning their intentions or commitment. Friends, partners, and even colleagues might mistake this behavior for coldness when, in reality, the Sigma believes they're being respectful. This tendency is rooted in the Sigma's own worldview. They see overstepping boundaries as an invasion, so they steer clear of anything that might feel pushy or intrusive. Ironically, this approach often alienates people who thrive on warmth and closeness. To the Sigma, giving someone space is a sign of respect. To others, it can feel like being pushed away. The issue isn't indifference, it's miscommunication. Sigmas don't realize that many people interpret distance as disinterest. They think they're doing the right thing by not intruding, but in doing so, they create an unintentional barrier. It's a double-edged sword. What feels natural and considerate to the Sigma can feel like rejection to everyone else. In truth, Sigmas care deeply about the people they let into their lives. But their unwavering belief in the sanctity of space can make those very people feel as though they're standing on the outside, looking in. For a sigma, maintaining balance between giving space and showing connection is a constant challenge, and one they rarely realize they're facing. Number 3, a unique blend of charisma and aloofness. Sigmas have an almost paradoxical nature that draws people in and pushes them away, often at the same time. They possess a quiet charisma, an unspoken confidence and self-assuredness that captivates those around them. They don't try to command attention, it simply happens. People are drawn to their mysterious, self-contained energy, intrigued by the way they navigate the world with such calm detachment. But just as quickly as a sigma's charm draws someone closer, their aloofness can leave them feeling miles away. This duality is what makes connecting with a sigma so challenging. One moment, they're fully present, engaging in deep, thought-provoking conversations or offering insights that make you feel seen and understood. The next moment, they retreat into themselves, leaving others wondering if they imagined the connection altogether. It's not deliberate manipulation, but a reflection of how sigmas operate. They engage deeply when something genuinely interests them, but they have no tolerance for superficiality or emotional demands that feel forced. For someone trying to get close, this unpredictability feels like chasing a shadow. Just when you think you've caught a glimpse of who they really are, they pull back, leaving you questioning your place in their world. To the sigma, it's a natural rhythm. They oscillate between connection and solitude, engagement and withdrawal, without realizing how disorienting it might be for others. This unique mix of allure and detachment makes sigmas unforgettable but also incredibly difficult to understand. They're the type of person who leaves a lasting impression but rarely lets anyone leave one on them. For those seeking a deeper bond, it can feel like aiming for a target that keeps shifting, close enough to tempt but never close enough to reach. Number 4. An unconventional definition of closeness is. For sigmas, closeness operates on an entirely different wavelength than most people are accustomed to. They don't equate it with frequent conversations, grand gestures, or open emotional exchanges. In fact, they often find traditional expressions of intimacy to be overwhelming, unnecessary, or even shallow. Instead, their version of connection is quiet, understated, and deeply rooted in mutual respect. To a sigma, closeness is about presence, not performance. It's the ability to sit in silence with someone without feeling the need to fill the void. It's trusting someone enough to share their solitude without fear of intrusion. They value relationships where understanding exists without the need for constant affirmation. If a sigma allows someone into their inner circle, it's not because they need them. It's because they've chosen them. And for a sigma, that choice carries more weight than words ever could. This unconventional approach can often be misinterpreted. Someone close to a sigma might feel neglected because the relationship doesn't come with the usual markers of affection. There may be long gaps between messages or an absence of visible emotional vulnerability, but what others see as distance, sigmas see as trust. To them, the strongest bonds don't require constant maintenance. They're built to endure the natural ebb and flow of life. Sigmas are fiercely independent, and they extend that independence to their relationships. They don't want to control or be controlled. They want a connection that exists freely, without pressure or obligation. For those who can understand and embrace this subtle, unspoken bond, a relationship with a sigma can be incredibly fulfilling. But for those who expect traditional closeness, it might feel like trying to grasp something intangible, real, but always just out of reach. Number 5. Emotionally selective, almost to a detriment. Sigmas are highly selective when it comes to forming emotional attachments. And this isn't by accident. For them, relationships aren't something to be entered into casually. Every connection they make comes with an unspoken set of criteria, one so nuanced and specific that most people will never realize they're being assessed. Sigmas won't say outright what they're looking for. Instead, they quietly evaluate whether someone aligns with their deeply held values, intellectual curiosity, and emotional stability. This makes their circle of close relationships incredibly small. They're not interested in quantity, only quality, and their standards are unapologetically high. A Sigma would rather spend time alone than compromise their peace or energy on a connection that feels superficial or draining. To outsiders, this may seem overly rigid or even arrogant. But to the Sigma, it's a form of self-preservation. They see emotional investment as precious, something not to be wasted on relationships that don't feel meaningful. The downside to this selectivity is that it can make Sigmas seem unapproachable or overly critical. People may feel like they're being judged, or worse, dismissed, when they fail to meet the Sigma's unspoken expectations. This can alienate individuals who might have been good companions if given a chance. But to the Sigma, compatibility isn't something to force or fake. They believe that genuine connections should happen naturally and effortlessly, without compromising who they are. Ironically, this intense selectivity can sometimes work against them. By being so cautious, Sigmas risk missing out on relationships that could have evolved into something truly valuable. Yet for the Sigma, this is a trade-off they're willing to make. They'd rather wait for the rare connection that truly resonates than settle for anything less. It's a lonely road at times, but it's one they walk with intention. Number 6. Guardians of their energy. Sigmas are hyper-aware of how relationships impact their mental and emotional energy. Unlike most people who might tolerate or even overlook draining interactions, Sigmas have a zero-tolerance policy for anything or anyone that threatens their peace. They're masters at reading subtle energy dynamics, detecting emotional neediness, manipulation, or negativity from miles away. Once they sense someone might disrupt their equilibrium, they don't hesitate to pull back, even if it means walking away from what could have been a meaningful connection. To Sigmas, energy is a finite resource. They don't just give it away freely or waste it on relationships that don't feel balanced. They instinctively avoid people who demand constant reassurance, thrive on drama, or create unnecessary tension. This doesn't mean they lack empathy. On the contrary, they often understand others' struggles deeply. However, they refuse to become anyone's emotional crutch or punching bag. Their boundaries are firm, and their withdrawal can feel abrupt or even cold to those who don't understand their reasoning. The tricky part is that this self-protective instinct can sometimes lead them to preemptively cut ties with people who aren't actually draining but simply misunderstood. Sigmas are so determined to guard their energy that they might misinterpret a momentary emotional need as a sign of a high-maintenance personality. Their cautious approach can result in missed opportunities for relationships that could have been deeply fulfilling if given the chance. Yet, to the Sigma, this approach feels necessary. They view their inner world as sacred and believe it's their responsibility to protect it. While this can make them seem distant or overly guarded, it's also what allows them to maintain their independence, clarity, and sense of self. For Sigmas, preserving their energy isn't selfish. It's essential for their survival and growth. Number 7. Constantly testing loyalty without announcement. For Sigmas, loyalty isn't just a desirable trait. It's a non-negotiable foundation for any meaningful connection. But they don't trust easily, and instead of taking someone's loyalty at face value, they feel compelled to test it. The catch? They do it subtly and without announcement, leaving the other person completely unaware that they're being evaluated. These tests aren't malicious. They're often subconscious. A Sigma might observe how you react in moments of stress, how consistent you are in your actions, or how you talk about others when they're not around. They're not looking for perfection, just authenticity and reliability. Any signs of betrayal, superficiality, or inconsistency are quietly noted and factored into the Sigma's decision to let you into their inner world. The problem is, this unspoken testing can make relationships feel uncertain for the other person. Without realizing it, they may sense a subtle pressure to prove themselves, even though the Sigma would never ask for it outright. This creates an invisible layer of tension, as if the connection is constantly under review. People might feel like they're walking on eggshells, unsure if they're meeting the Sigma's unspoken standards or falling short. For the Sigma, this isn't about being manipulative or overly critical. It's about self-preservation. They've likely experienced betrayal or disappointment in the past, which has made them cautious about who they trust. To them, these quiet tests are a way of ensuring they won't invest in the wrong people. Unfortunately, this approach can backfire. Some people might grow weary of feeling scrutinized and walk away, even if they were genuinely loyal. Sigmas, in their quest to guard against betrayal, can unintentionally push away those who were willing to stand by them all along. It's a delicate balancing act, one they rarely realize they're performing. Number 8. The inherent fear of dependence. For Sigmas, independence isn't just a defining trait, it's their safety net, their armor, and their compass. While many admire their self-reliance, few understand that beneath it lies a deep-seated fear of dependence. To a Sigma, relying on someone else feels like handing over a piece of their freedom, and that's a price they're rarely willing to pay. This fear isn't born out of arrogance or distrust, but often stems from past experiences where dependence led to disappointment, vulnerability, or even betrayal. Opening up to someone, letting them in emotionally, feels like walking a tightrope. What if the person lets them down? What if they lose control of their carefully maintained autonomy? These questions linger in the Sigma's mind, making vulnerability feel more like a gamble than an opportunity for connection. For this reason, they'd rather carry the weight of their struggles alone than risk someone else dropping it. This mindset isn't about rejecting others, it's about self-protection. Sigmas are fiercely protective of their sense of self, and dependence on anyone else, even emotionally, feels like a potential threat to their identity. They often equate dependence with weakness, and admitting they need someone, whether it's for support, comfort, or guidance, feels like compromising their inner strength. However, this fear comes at a cost. By avoiding dependence, Sigmas often miss out on the depth and richness that comes with trusting others. They may unintentionally keep people at arm's length, even those who are genuinely trustworthy and willing to support them unconditionally. For Sigmas, the challenge isn't just in letting others in, it's in recognizing that dependence doesn't have to mean losing themselves. True connection, after all, is built on mutual support, not surrender. But accepting this idea requires them to confront their greatest fear, relinquishing a little control in exchange for something greater. Number 9. A deep need for mental stimulation. For Sigmas, mental stimulation isn't just a preference, it's a necessity. They thrive on conversations that challenge their intellect, expand their perspective, or explore uncharted ideas. Small talk, gossip, or surface-level exchanges don't just bore them. They drain their energy and make them feel like they're wasting time. Sigmas are wired for depth, and if a conversation doesn't spark their curiosity or engage their mind, they'll quietly check out, leaving others feeling like the connection is purely transactional. This isn't a deliberate slight. Sigmas simply crave intellectual engagement as much as others crave emotional connection. They're the type to dive into discussions about philosophy, human behavior, science, or obscure historical events, often bringing insights that catch others off guard. Their curiosity knows no bounds, and they expect the same in return. If someone doesn't meet their intellectual pace, or worse, dismisses their need for meaningful dialogue, they'll quickly lose interest. To those who value lighter or more casual conversations, this trait can come across as elitist or even dismissive. But to the Sigma, it's not about superiority, it's about compatibility. They're not looking for a mental chess match. They simply want to connect with people who can meet them on their level, who are willing to explore deeper topics without fear of complexity or abstraction. The downside is that this deep need for intellectual stimulation can unintentionally alienate people. Those who struggle to keep up may feel inadequate, while others may view the Sigma as overly intense or difficult to relate to. For the Sigma, however, it's not about impressing anyone or proving anything. It's about finding relationships that truly resonate. Shallow interactions leave them feeling disconnected, while a mentally stimulating connection makes them feel alive. And for Sigmas, that's the only connection worth pursuing. Number 10. Nonconformity creates unbridgeable gaps. Sigmas are driven by an innate need to follow their own path, one that rarely aligns with societal norms or expectations. This isn't a deliberate act of rebellion, but a natural expression of who they are. They reject conventional ways of thinking, living, and behaving because they see them as limitations to their personal growth and authenticity. While this nonconformity is part of what makes them unique and intriguing, it also creates a divide between them and those who can't or won't understand their perspective. For Sigmas, conformity feels like a cage, and they have little interest in fitting into predefined roles or following social scripts. This often alienates them from mainstream culture, where fitting in and adhering to collective norms is seen as a virtue. To the Sigma, however, those norms are merely distractions from what truly matters: self-reliance, independent thought, and personal authenticity. This rejection of societal expectations can make them seem inaccessible, even unapproachable, to those who don't share their mindset. The gap between the Sigma's nonconformity and the rest of the world's conformity often feels unbridgeable. People who are comfortable with traditional ideas of success, relationships, or social behavior may struggle to understand why Sigmas choose to live so differently. The Sigma's worldview can come across as distant, even arrogant, because they don't fit into familiar social frameworks. What might feel like a perfectly natural way of life to them can seem confusing, alien, or even threatening to those who are deeply embedded in the normal world. This nonconformity doesn't necessarily mean Sigmas are antisocial. They're just selective about who they connect with. They don't mind being alone, and in fact, they often prefer it. But when someone does manage to break through their walls, it's because they share a similar ability to see beyond the conventional. Unfortunately, the very things that make Sigmas intriguing also make them seem out of reach, cementing their reputation as inaccessible and distant. In the end, Sigmas are a fascinating blend of complexity and contradiction, navigating life with an intensity and self-reliance that both captivates and mystifies. They aren't hard to understand because they want to be. They are hard to understand because they choose to be, guarding their inner world with a level of care that's often misunderstood as aloofness or indifference. Their relationships, whether personal or professional, are marked by a quiet intensity that demands respect, autonomy, and intellectual engagement. They don't seek validation, nor do they offer it easily. Instead, they create connections that are subtle yet profound, formed not by societal expectations, but by shared values and mutual respect. For those who are patient enough to navigate their guarded walls, a connection with a Sigma can be transformative. But getting close to one requires more than persistence. It demands an understanding of their unique needs, their emotional complexities, and their profound need for independence. Sigmas are not islands, but they are shores that require careful exploration, offering rewards that go beyond superficial interactions. It's not about fitting into their world. It's about respecting the boundaries that make their world their own. Ultimately, Sigmas don't need anyone to complete them. But for those who earn their trust and respect, they offer a rare and authentic bond that cannot be found in the shallows. And while getting close may be a challenge, the rewards for those who succeed are as deep and meaningful as the Sigmas themselves. If you've made it this far, you're probably beginning to see just how unique and intriguing Sigmas truly are. There's a lot more to uncover. So, if you want to dive deeper into the minds of these fascinating individuals, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Join us on this journey of exploration, self-discovery, and personal growth. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Subscribe now and stay tuned for more exceptional content. Thanks, damsels, for tuning in. See you in the next vid. Bye and stay blessed.